if you don't do a residency, you'll never be able to make it as a clinical pharmacist, is one of the biggest statements you hear in pharmacy school and after you graduate. Is it true though?
I see my victory so clear. I see my victory so clear. And today, we break through. And today, we break through. And today, we break through. And today.
Guys, I'm super stoked to have a pharmacist on the podcast who I've become really good friends with. I actually met him back when I did the Fit Pharmacist Friday series that's still going to this day. 5 years ago, we've stayed in contact on social media, and because he's taken the principles of a personal brand and put those into practice consistently, he has totally shaped his career, blowing pretty much any other competition out of the water as the go-to expert in creating CorConsultRx. And guys, it is my honor, privilege, and I'm just freaking pumped for this, to welcome back to the Fit Pharmacist Healthcare Podcast, Dr. Mike Corvino, founder of CorConsultRx. Welcome back, bro.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Great to be back again.
I'm like geek fanning right here, man. It's been such a long time, but guys, I've known Mike for a while. We started back when we first started our own individual brands back in the day. And as I said in my interview with Rich Waith of RX Radio, Mike, me, and Rich, I call us the Three Musketeers of Pharmacy because we all got our little intricacies, but we just do what we like and we go after it. But the thing that's so cool is these guys have both helped me tremendously in getting this podcast started, and they've just been super supportive. So first off, man, I just want to say thank you for all the support that you've given over the years and continue to give, because I wouldn't be here without you guys. So thank you.
No, of course, man. And you know, it's right back at you too. Cause the first time we ever talked, and I wrote an article for the, your blog and all that. I mean, I think I had maybe 100 followers on Instagram at the time. Like I had literally just out of the gate, and you had already been established and stuff. So, I mean, you definitely springboarded me, into getting any kind of an audience and stuff too. So, I appreciate all the help you've given me along the way too.
I can't help but cheer on a badass, bro.
I don't know about all that, but.
Well, as you guys are going to hear from this interview, this guy is literally one of the biggest badasses in pharmacy. So I did a couple podcasts with Mike because he has such a fascinating career, starting as a professional MMA fighter as a pharmacy student. That's right. Pharmacy school wasn't hard enough. Let's go fight professionally. True story. I'll link that podcast down below. He also has been the Pharmacist Preceptor of the Year in his entire state of the Carolinas. Is it 2 years in a row?
It was 3 years in a row.
Yeah, but I mean, y'all can tell he's just so humble. But seriously, 3 years in a row for an entire state Preceptor of the Year. So we did a podcast all about how to be a good preceptor, how to find a good mentor, and both of those are just truly fascinating deep dives. But what I really want to focus on in this interview is how the genesis of that, and how the focus of having a strong personal brand, really diving into this kind of alter ego of CorConsultRx, has totally transformed his career. So Mike, can you just give us a little insight into, so I'm going to skip through some things. Pharmacy student, which was a phenomenal story. Again, you guys have to listen to that episode. It's freaking incredible. Pro MMA fighter, decided to go all in on pharmacy, graduates pharmacy school, I think right off being a manager at Walgreens, if I remember correctly.
So I floated for a couple months, and then, the way it kind of worked out, I was able to get into a store fairly quickly. But I floated for a couple months and then transitioned over.
So guys, that's where his career kind of started. There's more to that backstory. And a lot of times there is a misbelief, a limiting belief really in pharmacy, that if you go to retail, there's no going back. You can't go back and do a residency. You'll never be able to be clinical, blah, blah, blah. But Mike had a fascination for data, for clinical trials, and just the information that pharmacy entails. So that's kind of where I want to set the tone for where this guy, quote, started. There's a lot behind that, but this is kind of where I want him to share his story. So Mike, you're a Walgreens pharmacist. You're just out of pharmacy school. You're managing a job. Tell us why you had this fascination. Like, where did CorConsultRx come from? How did that whole thing start from 100 followers to, I think it's what, over 25,000 right now on Instagram alone?
Yeah, I think 23, something like that.
It'll be 25 before I stop talking, I promise.
Okay, well, there you go.
Yeah, man, go ahead. Like, this is just, I'm just going to take notes.
So as far as like the interest in, the clinical area of pharmacy, that obviously happened during school, and I was sort of transitioning, like you were saying, from doing the MMA stuff. Because originally when I was, my first 2 years of pharmacy school, I was way more heavily focused on the MMA side of things than actually learning my pharmacotherapy. And so once I hit 3rd year, halfway through or so, that's when I really kind of I realized I had to make a choice. And when I went, I was interested in the pharmacy side of things, but it wasn't just my main focus. So once I realized I had to make a choice and go all in on the pharmacy side, just for the career longevity and all that, it was just one of those things that because I'm very competitive and whatnot, I just sort of transitioned that energy, instead of being more on the athletic side, over to the clinical side. So like I went and just tried as hard as I could to destroy this fake competition on rotations, if you will. I was like competing against myself, but in my mind it was, worth competing for. And that really is what started the interest, because then it became like a game of like, okay, well, how much can I learn about this, area of medicine? And I met some great people on the way, obviously, and mentors and things that, are much, much smarter than I am. And they kind of opened my eyes to going a lot deeper into the actual clinical thinking, more so than just the superficial knowledge of pharmacotherapy, which I thought, I had memorized some guidelines, I know this, but then they started making me kind of dive deeper into the why behind all that. As far as, why the guidelines say that, what does the data say? Does the patient sitting right in front of you apply to that data set? Does it make sense from a physiology or biochemistry standpoint? And then I realized I don't know anything. I'm way dumber than I thought. And so and whenever there's like a big mountain to climb like that, that's what really, gets me motivated. And so realizing that I was about to have a PharmD, and as most, new grads realize, it's like, I don't know as much as I thought I knew. It just went really hard into making sure that every single day I was trying to increase my knowledge set somehow, way, shape, or form. And really, that's kind of how I started CorConsult. I had zero intention of being like a brand or anything like that. And I'm actually, you've known me for a long time. I'm actually fairly against a lot of the, like the big self-help and like the motivational stuff. I usually stay away from that, because I'm like, it's, whatever, I don't need that. So it wasn't like I made the CorConsult to ever be any kind of a quote unquote brand or anything. I legitimately started off with the thought of, no one's ever going to look at this, but if the 6 people that do look at it, if I start it, I'm going to want to keep it going, because there's so many people, you've seen this, I don't know how, probably so many times, because you've been doing it so long. You see so many people, they start the Instagram page or the Twitter page, whatever, they post 4 times, they're not, they don't have 1 million followers, and they quit a month later, because contrary to popularity, it's actually super hard to get people to care what you have to say.
Yeah.
And it takes a ton of work, and people think it's going to be like awesome. You just get to get on private jets and hang out. And it's like, yeah, that's not how life works. And so it was, I knew I wouldn't want to be in that group of like just starting and stopping it. And so it would force me to kind of keep learning, keep coming up with new ideas, finding holes that I didn't know in my knowledge set that I didn't know about, to kind of fill those holes, because I would have to make content for the page. And so it was almost like I built it as like a accountability type of thing, more so than anything as far as trying to build a brand or anything like that. It was just because I didn't do the residency, I knew that there's 2 options at that point. One is I just know what I know, and that's that. And I just do my, whatever it is, 15 or 20 hours of CE a year, which is the biggest joke on the planet. Or I have to do it myself, because no one's going to tell me, go study this or go do that. I was licensed at that point. So that's kind of what led to it initially. And then it's sort of evolved, obviously, from there.
Yeah, man. And it's interesting because I think there's a part of your journey that people don't know about. And that has to do with your weekends off. Like when you were working in Walgreens and you were, full-time community pharmacist, you were managing, crushing that game. You started to dive in, and that started to bleed into your work as a pharmacist because you tried to evolve and grow and learn. So I believe one of the things, you were managing an MTM clinic. Then you started your big quote vacation time, your time off. That wasn't in Cabo. That was in the classroom. So can you just kind of share, because I think this is the part that a lot of people don't realize or want to face. When you see a brand, I know you don't call it a brand, but that's what it is. When you see an evolution in a career, let's call it, of progressing at such a consistent rate, you feel like, oh, they just know someone, or, oh, they just got lucky. But guys, the work that's required to do this is why most people don't do it. So can you just kind of share what that looked like? So in this process, when you were still working community full time, but the things that you were doing to grow your skill set and learn, can you kind of share what that looked like?
Yeah, it's kind of funny you bring that up because I actually especially the vacation days, I kind of forgot about that, to be totally honest with you.
I remember.
Part of my days, I think part of my brain is like suppressing that because I spent so much time. But so basically, like you said, as I started going through, I took over as a pharmacy manager, and I wanted to find new ways to kind of, enhance my clinical knowledge, so to speak. There's actually the first podcast I was ever on with Richard Waite. I found the clip of it the other day, actually, because it was from 2017, and him and I are talking about me doing MTM, because at the time that wasn't something, and really in a lot of places in the country, it's still not pushed in retail settings as hard as like vaccinations or something like that. But I was really pushing that, even though it wasn't something that was like part of my job description necessarily, because I looked at it as one, I'm doing a good job at my job, so to speak. I'm doing the right by the patients and all that. But also my benefit that I would get from it is that it would give me practice. Like if I was doing a CMR and so complete medication review, and I had to go through the disease state, like let's say diabetes with the patient even if it was over the phone, it would, depending on what questions they asked or, whatever, it would give me practice on doing that. And that's all rotations and all that stuff is obviously learning and things, but it's also practicing because you have to go out and do it, because it's a lot different than answering A, B, C, or D on a test versus a human being sitting in front of you that's somebody's grandma that you have a responsibility to make, sure she's safe and all that. And so it was just something that I looked at as, okay, well, this is a good opportunity for me to practice. And then on the other side of it, as far as like wanting to find ways of continuing my education, you can always enhance your own education by reading and looking through the material and journals and all that, which is great. But there is some value to having someone who has done that and, and spent years in clinical work and can kind of lead you in the right ways. And so I found certain opportunities, like they call it bar and grill. Is I shout out to Dr. Wayne Wirt. He's the smartest human being I've ever met, and definitely one of my greatest mentors. But he has something called bar and grill, where you basically, if you are on an ambulatory care rotation, you go to this. It was like a 4 or 5 hour session. Usually 2 or 3 people would present a patient case, and then he would grill you on why you thought that was a good recommendation, and then he would destroy you with your recommendations. And they call it bar and grill because it used to be at a bar, because he's been retired for like, I want to say it's almost like 10 years now, except he still goes 5 days a week to the school. And he's at such a high level that like they just let him keep his office and stuff. His wife told him that he was no longer allowed to take all the students and pay for their meals and stuff at the bar. So he's like, well, we just kept the name, because he'd been doing it for like 45 years at the medical university. And so he kept the name. He goes, it's just not as fun now. Now it's mostly just getting grilled. But that for me, when I went through that as a student, because that's one of those things that everybody's scared to death of. And once I went through it, I learned so much sitting there with him for like 4 hours that I realized like how valuable that is. I mean, people pay big money to hear him speak all over the country, and here he is that lives 10 minutes from my house, and I can go talk to him for free. And so I just realized that plus there's several other, like residency journal club, like there's a bunch of residents at MUSC, because it's a fairly big teaching hospital. So there was journal clubs and topic reviews and all that. So I literally just found every single opportunity that I could to go to those types of things. I went to Bar and Grill twice a month. That's how often it is. Twice a month for 3 years straight. I did every like journal club type of thing, topic discussion. Literally, I'd be like this random dude sitting in the residency area where all these residents are like learning and sharing journal clubs. I'm just some dude that's not part of the residency sitting in the back. They probably thought I was a freaking weirdo. But, I was like, well, I mean, you guys said I could come. Like, the residency people didn't care if I was there. And so I just sit in the back, and then I throw in my 2 cents, and I started realizing, I was like, okay, I know some stuff. And, it became such a habit that, I had literally spent every second of my PTO for the first 3 years I was a pharmacist on only going to things like that. So I know, because I had a schedule where I was off a couple days during the week because I would work like 14-hour shifts. And so I already had some days, but then there'd be things that would come up, like Bar and Grill would happen. I didn't have, it was one of those things where I was working that day. So I would use a PTO day, that way I could go to Bar and Grill. And then it just ended up by the end of the year, I had no more PTO left. And I was like, well, I guess I'll just take vacation next year. And then it went like that for 3 years. And it was one of those things where, looking back, it was pretty rough. And I probably could have had a little bit more balance and quality of life or whatever, but I wouldn't change any of it now, looking, where I saw it kind of led. And I'm glad that I went through that and kind of went down that path, because something that a pharmacist told me one time, basically, I think I had to be like 2 months out but before I was going to graduate. So it was almost to the end. And a pharmacist told me that, and it was a retail pharmacist, and that's all I'll say, basically said, I was spouting off something I learned on rotation that day, and told me, enjoy this time, because this is the smartest you'll ever be as far as your clinical knowledge, because they knew I'd already signed on with Walgreens and stuff. And I still think about that to this day, because that's like the weirdest thing I've ever heard in my life. Like, we're the only medical, professional that could ever even remotely get away with saying that. And it's one of those things that it just like almost like haunted me, kind of thing, because I was like determined, no way, I'm never going to be that. So when I was spending all those times doing PTO and all that, I just kept thinking about, what that person told me. And I was like, no, not me. I can't do it. Like, there's no way I'm going to, I would rather be on a beach right now, probably, but I'm not going to be that person. And that's kind of one of those things that pushed me. And like I said, now I'm very glad that I did the path that I did, and, spent that time, because it was very valuable in the long run.
So guys, you can't skip the work. And that's something that me, Rich, and Mike just really believe and practice. And you probably see all the memes like hustle hard and, no sleep, hashtag no sleep. Well, actually it's hashtag 10 to 2. And that's something that Rich is real big into. I think both you guys are super avid Gary Vee followers, but that's just something that we all just adapted to. And we all have our different lanes, but it's the mindset. Like, that's part of what is essential. Instagram, social media, all that stuff, it gets a bad rap, because unfortunately there's a lot of people that just repost stuff and they're not putting in the work behind the scenes. But that's what's required to get to a level that Mike has. So if you really want to script your brand and create this outstanding career, you have to eat some junk. Like, real talk, you've got to be able and willing to go through this process, because that is how you grow. You grow through what you go through. But so Mike, you're going through this for like 3 years. And then, and I want to make sure I don't skip anything. Then you got this opportunity with this PA school. So you're doing the CorConsult, you're basically documenting your journey using social media, not as like an ego boost, but as an accountability. Like, I'm putting this out there, my name's behind it, personal brand. And if it's got to be right, like, it's got to be high quality, because you have a standard. And most people would not understand that, but that's why you're succeeding, because you set your standard so high and your name's behind that. So you're documenting your journey, you're sharing the content, you're growing. Then you get this opportunity at a PA school. So tell us about that.
So it was one of those things that when I first had the opportunity kind of like brought up, it was the PA school. It was brand new. They were just starting. They were actually like probably a year and a half out from actually having their first class come through. And they had originally approached somebody that I knew, a friend of mine through work and things like that, that if they knew anybody who would be interested. And then they gave them my name. And at the time, I think I was like 28 at the time, 29 maybe. So especially not having done a residency, you know, I had zero reason to be teaching pharmacology or pharmacotherapy for PA school. It was something that was never on my radar. I never in a million years thought I'd be teaching. And it was something that they brought up to the PA school. The PA school kind of reached out, and I was like, well, I mean, you know, and they said, would you want to come in for an interview? Well, I'm thinking in my mind, okay, as soon as I do that, they're going to realize I'm a kid and I have no business doing this. And so I was like, but it'll be a good opportunity for me to kind of, you know, get the experience. I've never even thought about applying for anything academic. So maybe it'll just get to do the opportunity, meet some cool people, whatever. So I almost did it kind of like, you know, it's not going to go anywhere, but I'm off this day, so who cares? And so I went, and they were talking in the interview, they were talking about like finding innovative ways to educate and motivate students and things. And so they started bringing up CorConsult and asked kind of same thing, asking me why I started and all that. And I told them, you know, I had a very hard time sitting in a classroom and I'm, you know, in a traditional looking at PowerPoints and things. Like I'm a very kinetic learner. And so I understand that if I'm like that, I know the next generation coming up is going to be like that too. And so I just kind of went to where they were. They were at the time, Instagram was the hugest thing of all time. TikTok wasn't a thing yet, kids. And, so I was like, well, that's where everybody is. So I'll go there and I'll try to educate on that platform. And then at that point, I sort of like, I want to say maybe 4 or 5 months into having my podcast and everything. And so they liked that idea as well. And so they were like, well, we like that you're trying, you know, innovative ways and things. And so long story short, they basically were like, we'll pay you to develop the curriculum, the pharmacology curriculum. And then as long as we don't hate it, we'll pay you to teach it that first year. And I was like, I can't believe I'm doing this, but okay. Sure. So I sort of just jumped into it and just to see what would happen. And again, I'm glad that I did because it's absolutely like my favorite thing that I do now. I love working at the PA school. I've just finished up my 3rd year teaching there now. And I feel like I'm finally starting to get mediocre at it. And got kind of a system down for how I keep all my content updated for the students. Cause it's obviously needs to be more of a lecture style than what I just throw up on Instagram at random. And yeah, I mean, it's something that is allowed me not only again to stay accountable to keeping up, because now you're talking about other future professionals' careers that I need to make sure that I'm giving them the right information or I'm setting them up for failure. So to me, that's like a massive responsibility. And at the same time, also, I need to make sure that if I'm teaching every single disease state to them, that, I mean, I need to know what the heck I'm talking about for my own self too, because I'm not, how am I supposed to teach for an hour and a half twice a week on every disease state if I only know, you know, bits and pieces of it. And so it was another way of kind of like keeping me accountable and almost like forcing me to make sure, I don't care what you got going on, you're gonna learn today, because I didn't have a choice. Now I'm getting paid for it. I have all these people that I'm responsible for their education. And so that was, you know, it was one thing with CorConsult and it was great. And I wanted to keep doing that, but now I have both sides of things, professional and, you know, on my own, that there's like zero chance at that point to kind of start slacking. And so I knew I would be a student forever at that point.
Dude, I remember the day you texted me a photo of the syllabus or like the opportunity or contract or whatever. It was like a few years ago. And I was like, holy shit. Like, dude, this is badass. And you're like, oh, I don't know. I'm like, dude, yes, like this is awesome. But guys, so many lessons from what Mike said. And this is just like a snippet of this big story. So he created his own accountability. All right. You have to make yourself so that you can't get off the hook, because all of us are going to have days where we're tired, we're exhausted, we have to go to a party, whatever it is. But if you hold yourself accountable, not to yourself, but put that in the hands of other people, that if you don't show up, others will fail. That is what it takes to put yourself in that way. And you can either do it like make believe, like when Mike was on rotations, beating the other guy or whatever, or you can put yourself literally in a position where you are in charge of other people's success, of their learning experience. And because Mike is such a man of integrity, he did that. And he holds himself to one of the highest standards I've ever seen, which is part of why he succeeds so well in so many areas of his life. So some lessons, guys. And the other thing that's huge is, I say this all the time, you get rewarded in public what you practice in private. So Mike's been putting in this work, grinding all these ideas, Instagram, his 6 people or whatever he said. But then he gets this opportunity and they ask him about what he's doing with his brand, CorConsultRx. And he shares the ideas and they're like, holy crap. Then I remember, dude, when you started this, you started integrating Instagram into your classroom and asking questions. And I was like, I've never seen this before. Like, this is freaking awesome. But seriously, how did the students react? Were they just like the standard, like y'all know when you go to class, you got people half paying attention, they're on their phones, they're taking notes. But in your classroom, tell us what the engagement was like with your students.
So as far as like in the classroom setting, I think it's still, I don't want to act like they were all just like completely engaged 100%. Cause I mean, let's be serious. I was teaching at 11 o'clock. They had been at it since 8. I would have been checked out by 8:15. So I get it. Like with them. So with Instagram, I would just take posts and things like that I'd made and use that, because not everyone can, everybody learns differently. So I'd have my PowerPoint slides and I'd have the picture version that I would have through Instagram. And then as far as like interacting with, a lot of times, honestly, they'll DM me on Instagram instead of just email me on the school's email address.
Yes.
They know it's probably faster to get me that way. And it was just I think it was just provided me another opportunity to kind of like offer new, ways of, and I shouldn't say new ways of learning, but just adding like additions to augment their learning and make sure that I didn't treat them all as if like the cookie cutter mold that I feel like so many educators do. This is how we have to learn. This is what it is. Because I never fit any of those molds. And so they thought, professors in pharmacy school, some of them I'm sure thought I was destined for mediocrity. It's just, I just don't fit the same mold and learn the same way that maybe some other people do. So I just wanted to make sure that I never fell into that type of teaching.
Guys, so such a key point. And you guys hear me say this all the time. Regardless of what your content is, you have to know who your audience is so that you can meet them where they are. If you're putting out content and they're not in that social media platform, or that's not the style of kind of content ingestion, you could say, or consumption is probably a better word, that they like, it's not going to resonate. And if they're not understanding it or engaging with it, it's not going to do jack. It doesn't matter how many hours you put into it. So think of that. You're in pharmacy school either right now or think back to when you were. And you've got a teacher that is meeting you where you are, literally asking questions through Instagram, having you engaged. Would you prefer that, or would you prefer the PowerPoint slides that have like 10,000 bullet points on one slide and you're asleep before they start? You see what I'm saying? So you know the answer. You want to be in Mike's classroom. So think about that when you're creating your content. Are you meeting your audience where they are? That's such a key point. But guys, that's not the end of the story, because Mike, all the work he's doing, so he's setting himself accountable with CorConsultRx. Now he's teaching pharmacology in a PA school. Then it starts evolving even more. So tell us about this clinic thing, dude, because I think this is something I've never heard of, with how you integrate technology with it. And I'll just let you share it because it's just fascinating.
So as far as my current clinical pharmacy role, it was one of those things that it was definitely some word of mouth and some people that had put in a good word for me, as well as serendipity, I guess you could say. But basically, I had one of my old professors that somebody, again, as a mentor. His name is Dr. James Starrett. He was, at the time, had gotten a grant to do kind of like a research project where he went into this local federally qualified health center and basically was their only clinical pharmacist to help with diabetes education. And the grant paid some of his salary, and then he would get patients referred to him by the primary care physicians there. And he would go to the clinic and have appointments with the patients. And then that turned into him starting to have more collaborative practice, where he could, prescribe under them and things. But it was a limited, amount of time spent doing that because he has to teach and all these other things. It was just supposed to be a grant that after that would run out. And it worked well. And their chief quality officer at the clinic happens to be married to the director of the PA school. And so the director that I report to the PA school, Gabby Poole, her husband Anthony, basically they were talking obviously at home, saying that they wanted to continue this clinical pharmacist. They're both PAs, wanted to continue this clinical pharmacist role at the place I work now, Federal Healthcare Network. And she's like, well, I have a pharmacology professor that I feel like, is the nerd they're looking for kind of thing. And so he reached out to me, and, him and I talked about it at first and went back and forth. And then eventually kind of settled in to where he made me an offer, and I went over there, and that's been there ever since. So I'm basically their clinical pharmacist, and I do their diabetes education. Now I help with some of the psych stuff. I help with some of our dietary. We have a dietitian on staff, but I help in that role as well. I help with hypertension, asthma. We've been curing people of Hep C over the last couple of months, so that's been awesome. Wow. So we've basically a lot of different opportunities, and those programs have been growing and things like that. So that's opened up a whole new area that I don't do any dispensing whatsoever anymore. So I'm strictly just doing AmCare type work. And one of the other things that was great about that was all the MTM that I had done through Walgreens, because I had spent so much of my time doing that. I accumulated the 1,000 hours that I needed to sit for my diabetes educator board certification. So I had passed that kind of like the same time I got hired on at Feder. And then I took the BCPS, the pharmacotherapy specialist, because I'm like, well, I want to be cool like those kids that did residency. So I want these letters. And so I did that exam and passed that one. And to be honest, and this is totally not tooting my own horn, because
I'll toot it for you, dude. Keep going.
Well, I was because of the PA program and having in CorConsult, I've been forced to keep up with stuff so much that I really didn't even study. I just kind of like went and took the BCPS and passed it. And then I was at a thing at MUSC where I, precept for and everything. And I heard somebody mention that, yeah, people get their BCPS, and it wasn't even directed towards me, because I don't think the person that said it knew anything about me. But I just heard it. I wasn't part of the conversation. I just heard it from inside the room. And they said, but if you really want to specialize, you want to be an ambulatory care pharmacist, something like that, there's no chance. You have to do residency, because you couldn't pass that exam even without doing residency. So then I signed up for the ambulatory care exam, the VCACP, because I'm like, I got to prove a point now, because that's ridiculous. And so I passed that one. And then, so now I'm actually in the role that I'm technically board certified to be in. So now on paper, at least I look more appropriate. So, because there's a lot of people that put a lot of emphasis in those things. I could do my job without them, but I figured, hey, I've been fighting the system for so long, might as well play the game and participate in those board certifications and all that. And so, yeah, now I feel like I'm actually like legit now, because on paper I look better.
Literally the first person I've met that has more letters after their name than their actual name. Like, seriously, dude. So guys, think about this. Walgreens pharmacist, no residency. Now he's teaching pharmacology. He's managing several clinic locations as a clinical pharmacist. And don't you also do continuing education for physicians, CRNPs, PAs, like all that as well?
So yeah, I actually just spoke at a conference this past the end of last month that was designed for physicians, nurse practitioners, and PAs to get their CMEs. And I got to speak on dyslipidemia. I've gotten to talk of diabetes, obviously, and a couple other things at some random conferences and whatnot. So yeah, I've definitely had the opportunity. I did one on immunizations, and it was kind of funny because some of the people at MUSC who I think were not the biggest fans of mine, just because I wasn't the stereotypical student. And again, I completely understand where they were coming from, because I did not, to their eyes, I did not look like I was going anywhere but nowhere. I was cool because I looked in the audience when I was talking at one of those conferences, and several of them were in the audience, and I was like, I got a lot of stuff to say, so listen up. No, and realistically, they're all way smarter than I am anyway. But I just thought that was kind of funny that I was up there. They were probably like, who did he have to pay to let him on stage?
Freaking hilarious, guys. If you're not inspired and just like, holy crap, what did I just hear? Like, I don't know what else y'all want to listen to. I don't seriously, like, this is absolutely incredible. So many points here. You hear me say all the time, and this is straight from Amazon, straight from Jeff Bezos. Your personal brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. That doesn't just happen. Like, you can't buy that. That's from the consistent hard work that you put in when people aren't watching, behind the scenes, when no one would blame you for taking a nap, when no one would blame you for going to the movies, but you're committed to the standard you've set for yourself. So what happened? Mike put in the work. He had an opportunity. He shared his ideas because he's been putting in the work. They gave him an opportunity to teach. He went for it. He's like, this is an opportunity to raise my standard, give back, and hone my skills and serve people at the same time. From that opportunity, by happenstance, what'd you say? The director is looking for the program. Your name came up because personal brands, what people say when you're not in the room, they're talking about the work that you're consistently putting in. And they say, this is an opportunity. You come in, there's that opportunity. They were so impressed with your innovation, with technology as well, which is another avenue we didn't even touch on. But you are evolving at such an incredible rate with no residency. Like, y'all need to hear this. There is not one lane. There's not one way only to get what you want. It's going to require a lot of hard work and innovation and doing things most people would think you're crazy for. But just listen to this. We started with, I'm going to go to Walgreens, okay? And he's continually developing and growing. Years later, what degrees do you have now, dude? Like you're PharmD, but then what other certifications you have?
So the diabetes care and education specialist, pharmacotherapy specialist, and ambulatory care specialist.
And you're speaking at conferences across the country, paid, by the way, as an expert on these topics.
We'll call it Southeast. Let's not. I don't want to act like I'm some national speaker. That's not even close. A couple conferences here and there in the Southeast. Let's call it that.
Well, it's gonna get there, dude. Like, just I'm so incredibly like inspired and honestly honored because I had the privilege to see this process. Like, I haven't known you for as long as I'd like to, but dude, it's just so freaking inspiring to see all the things that people say, but very few people do because of the work and sacrifice required. But dude, it's freaking paying off. Like, I'm so proud of you, man. Like, you're,
thanks, man.
I'm one of the biggest fans, seriously, guys, just because there's so much unsaid on this. Like, this podcast could easily be like 10 hours. We can go Joe Rogan style, serious.
Okay,
but
awesome.
yeah, man, the amount of work that you do for others, I mean, there's no random thing where you get Preceptor of the Year for a state, because all the stuff that you guys hear him doing, it's not for him. He constantly pours back into students. And again, please listen to that podcast episode we did, I think it was a year or two ago, about how to become an awesome preceptor. He pours into his students like his own kids. He helps them with not just pharmacy school, with career development, with their personal brand. Like, dude, the amount of influence you're having on what people believe that they can accomplish as a pharmacist, as a person, is absolutely incredible. And you are, without a doubt, one of the biggest influencers in the profession. So, dude, seriously, thank you for everything that you do. Holy crap. Like,
I mean, you're definitely too kind, because I would definitely not see myself it's quite to that extent, but I greatly appreciate the compliment. And I'm definitely, that's one of my main focuses is like, I do want to, do right by the profession and kind of give back to, because it's something that I do. I love medicine, and that's something that I want to be able to, give back to, that community and bring in the next generation and all that.
Yeah, man. But so I just want people to, the reason I wanted people to hear this story is I meet so many pharmacists and students really who are way smarter than me. Like you say all the time. And it's true. Like, I didn't get into pharmacy school the first time I tried, but I put in the work and I stayed consistent with it. But I meet so many people that have this talent that I can see, but they don't believe it because, like you said, like, oh, this is the smartest you'll ever be. It's all downhill from here, or you won't ever go there without a residency, or, oh, no one can do that without a residency. There's so many limiting beliefs in thwarting people's potential in pharmacy. And that's one reason why I wanted you to tell your story, to crush the norm, to realize that, like, if you have a different path than the status quo, go that way. And if there's not a path, get out your freaking shovel and make it yourself so you can help other people and be on a podcast just like this, that you are, to tell people that you can create your own path. It's not a one route way.
Yeah. And that's the big thing there too, is I always hesitate sometimes when we start talking about the fact that I didn't do residency and that, because I don't ever want it to seem like I'm encouraging people not to do one.
Correct.
You know, I actually think it probably would have been a lot easier on me to just do it the right way, like quote unquote right way. I probably could add some PTO, but it was one of those things that I'm a big believer in, like self-awareness kind of thing. And if in my case where I hadn't set myself up to be like a solid residency applicant, you know, residency candidate, that, okay, I was like, okay, this is my reality. So now what? And I think that's where there's several people who they need to be real with themselves. I hear some students that are saying, I want to do what you do. And, you know, I'm not going to do residency either. And then their first month out of school, all I do see them on social media. They're at the beach every day. They're doing this, they're doing it. And I'm like, first of all, that's not what I did. Second of all, it's one of those things that you have to have an honest conversation with yourself too. If you know that I'm not going to freaking spend 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. every single night of my life learning pharmacotherapy that doesn't apply to anything that I'm doing for my career, in the hopes that one day it manifests into some new career that I don't even know about yet. I'm not going to do that. Then do residency. Like you have that accountability. You know, you and I are both doing our own thing, and I know you're very like goal oriented, and you're so like planned out. I mean, I wish I was like that. Like your whole year's like, Matt, you're gonna accomplish this, and this, and that works super well for you. And then whereas I know myself, and I know how not like that I am, and I almost get like closed minded if I have a goal. So people are like, what do you want? What's your goal? I'm like, dude, I have no clue. I'm just riding this thing and we'll see what happens. I have zero goals. I don't know where I'm going to be in 2 years. My goal is to open up every single door I can possibly get my hands on the handle. And then I'm going to run through whatever I feel like doing that day. So, but that's because that's my personality that works for me. And I think that whole, like, don't emulate what you think you want to be, like, know what you're good at, know what your personality is. And there's nothing wrong with that. I had a student one time who was, extremely organized. The most A-type person also, and love her to death. And she's a practicing pharmacist now. And I remember her being brutally honest with me. She goes, I'm not going to lie. She was, my first day with you on rotation. She said, it was like I thought it was a train wreck. She goes, I was watching you like do the way you were doing things. And she thought it was like super reckless, like with how I was like handling prescriptions and things. And then she goes, and then at the end of the day, somehow it all just like fit back together. And I was like, Dad, that's just how, I don't know. It's just how, it all makes sense to me.
Yes.
And then I saw her starting to kind of emulate that a little bit. And it was like, she wasn't getting the stuff done like she wanted to. And I was like, I'm like, no, I wish I was more like organized and things like that. Cause then people would think I know what I'm doing along the way instead of waiting until the end. But I was like, why do you change just because, you and I like get along and like, you want to do some of the same paths that I'm doing. It doesn't mean you have to do it the exact same way as me.
Yes. You
need to find what works for you. That's the big thing that I push for with students.
Exactly.
Find your way of doing it. Don't give a crap what anybody says. Don't care what I say. Don't care what you say. You need to find what works for you. And just like you said, if there isn't a path there, well, there wasn't a lot of paths, a lot of places at one point. So, make it, like, figure it out. Like it'll, if you want it bad enough, it'll work, or adapt and shift and whatever you need to do. But it's definitely, I think that like you said, there's no one path to do things. But the one common denominator is that hard work part, because none of this stuff is easy. None of it ever just happens. Anybody who's successful, 99.9% of them actually worked their faces off. They didn't, unless they came from a trust fund or something like that, which is very few people who are successful. And it's just one of those things. You have to work really hard and make sacrifice. And the other part of that, and I'm sorry, I'm rambling, but the other part that I'm really big believer on is, if that's not you, like, there's nothing wrong with that either. I don't think, I tell every single student on my rotation, I have zero interest in making little clones of myself. I have the worst work-life balance you've ever seen in your entire life.
There is no balance,
terrible.
Dude.
No balance whatsoever.
It doesn't exist.
Zero. It's terrible. So I'm like, don't you, the only way I would ever say, do it like this, is if for 100% fact, this is what you want, and you want to do it like that. One of the greatest things a student ever told me, I was giving him one of my spiels about, building his brand and things like that, and however you want to put it. And he's like, man, I'm going to be totally honest with you. he goes, I want to get through pharmacy school, do well in my job so I can keep my job, because I just want to make enough money so I can surf anytime I want.
Yes.
I was like, I love you for that, because that's so like aware of what you want.
Yes.
I'm like, I was like, that's it. I'm shutting down my whole like rah stuff, because that's not for you.
Yes.
And there's nothing wrong with that either. So like, that's the thing. I'm like, it sounds awesome. We could go to the beach wherever you want. Like, it's, it sounds pretty cool, but like, it's just one of those things, that being that self-aware of really what you want. And then if you do want to have more opportunities, you don't want to have yourself kind of stuck, so to speak, then it's time to figure out how you're going to get there and then work your face off.
100%, man. And so many good points with that. But yeah, that's why you guys hear me talk about all the time. What's the foundation of your personal brand? It's you. You have to have that self-awareness. You have to be practicing what works for you. And I was going to say self-care, but Mike's like, what's that? No, but real talk, it works for him. That's his balance, if you want to put that in quotation marks. But well, seriously, that's what works, man.
And that's the thing. Like, that's the part that it's been hard to kind of tell people. Now it's easier because now they're kind of seeing it. The amount of people, including people in my family, who told me that you got to stop this because you're going to burn yourself out. You're going to end up hating your job, blah, 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 blah. And I kept telling them, like, no, you get burned out. I don't get burned out. This is, they take that as me being cocky or whatever. And it's not. That's literally, I'm doing what I love, to the point where, no, this doesn't, if I work 18 hours on podcast material, that's fun for me. Like, that's not, like, for me, it's not a matter of like it's taking me practice to actually go on vacation, which I just got back from Grenada with my wife. It was great. I had a great time. But it was the first vacation we took. And again, love her to death for being so supportive on this time, because I think like most people out there would have left my butt and found somebody who likes to do fun things. But she was always like super supportive of me and encouraging and whatnot. And I think that like when we had our first vacation, it literally gave me anxiety. Yep. Like, the point where I was like, I need to be doing. This is a real story. I'm to finish up with this, so I know I'm taking up too much of your time. So this year, actually, so I haven't learned that much. This year, I was going for 2 days, 2 days with some friends of mine to go snowboarding. That's it, 2 days. And like, I woke up, I hadn't had a vacation since the previous April, because I'd been with Federer and got excited doing all these new things. So I kind of went back into my old ways. So 2018, vacation, 2019, a little bit, and then I took a big gap again. So February this year, I'm sitting there and I woke, like, I was in bed, like, still sleeping from the night before. I was off that day. I wasn't leaving to go to leave for the trip until probably 10 or 11 in the morning. And I literally, like, it woke me up out of a sound sleep. It was 4:30 in the morning, 5 in the morning. And I had this like ridiculous, and this is going to sound like a crazy person. I promise it's not really as bad as it sounds. I literally had this feeling of like, there's someone right now who's a younger version of me who's working right now while I'm sitting here on a freaking break in bed. And I jumped up. Like, it was like, my wife was like, what are you doing? I was like, not today. You're not taking me. And I like went into the living room and I worked on my podcast stuff until it was time to go. Cause I'm like, no, like, that's what brings me happiness though. Like, and it almost makes me less happy when I'm, it's like that movie, The Big Short, where he goes, he says, my wife says I'm unhappy. He goes, but you're happy when you're unhappy. He goes, I am happy or I'm unhappy. It's like, that's how it feels. Like, I feel like when I'm under a lot of pressure, I got a ton of things. It almost is like my happy zone, because it feels like, okay, the fight's on. Let's do this. Yeah, man. I hear that 100%. And a couple of people that I work with on their brand, I mean, the one, just like, if you heard just an hour for life, first off, you'd be like, oh, that sounds like me. But most people, they'd be like, holy crap, like, how are you married? How do you have a kid? Like, how? But it works for her because that's what brings her happiness. Other people, they like, reading a book a year is a huge accomplishment. But if that's what they're about, that's all good. You're not comparing yourself to what, other people do, or to how many books a month or whatever the heck. But you've got to find what makes you happy. Like, that self-awareness piece is so important, because if you don't have that, your personal brand is going to drive you nuts, because you're not going to be doing what you like. You're going to be comparing yourself to what other people like. And that's not going to help anybody, let alone yourself.
And when people see that content, when they see it's not genuine, they're not going to be inspired. They're going to be like, this is boring or this sucks. And they're not going to stick around. It's going to be wasting your time when you could be surfing or going to the beach or freaking out about snowboarding, whatever you wanted to do. So I think that's such a key point, man. I think that's really, really important for people to realize and understand. And a lot of times people say like, oh, fake it till you'll make it. I'll learn to like it. Well,
yeah, I'm not a big fan of fake it till you make it. Yeah. I think there's a part of that when it comes to like confidence and things like that, where you kind of like fake it till you become it sort of thing. I heard a TED talk on that one time. I think that's a better way of putting it. Yes. But as far as like trying to start like something, if you don't like it right away, you're done for. Because I'll tell you, like my first Instagram post that I ever made, it got 1 like. I don't know if it still has 1 like on it, but 1 like, and it was my wife. It was a straight pity like. And I'm like, she was like, oh geez, this poor guy. Like, I just have to, I was like, what? Like, and like, literally like, but I never even gave 2 craps about that. Like to me, like if you put 30 people in a room, that's a lot of freaking people. And like if I had 30 people in here, I'd be all crammed in this room. So to me, if I had 30 followers, I'm like, that's 30 people that give 2 craps about what I have to say. That's kind of ridiculous. So when you start talking about thousands, that's insanity. Like, why in the world are you listening to what I have to say? Yeah. Like, and I think that like enjoying that process along the way and keeping things in perspective is what keeps it fresh. And you have to do something that you like, even if it's not pharmacy related. This can be applied to Ninja Turtles or whatever. You can do whatever it is that you're passionate about. But yeah, if you don't have that, man, you're done for, because there's no 2 a.m. sucks if you're doing something you don't like. Yeah.
And I mean, I've seen this, we're on a podcast, so I'll just use this as an example. I've seen some people get into podcasting because they're like, oh, podcasting's hot. I want to be famous or, build my brand. So they do it and the content is terrible. Like, it's not inspiring or anything. But like for you, for example, you genuinely like it. You're constantly innovating. This dude has a freaking virtual reality podcast. Seriously. It's ridiculous. You could be standing in your living room. Like, this guy's insane because he genuinely likes it. He likes spending a whole day, like not exaggerating, 24 hours on one episode to innovate. And how can I make it better? And how can I make it so good that I'm embarrassed from the last episode that I did? That's what his mindset is, because that's what makes him happy. Shameless plug and promo for you, bro. Where's your podcast at? Where do they listen to it?
So it's on all like kind of social media, anything that has a podcast, any platform that has podcast, Spotify, iHeartRadio, any of those things, iTunes. And so it's just CorConsultRx, and it's spelled COR consult, one word. So it's really, as far as the horrible branding, there you go. Is a good example. Let's use a word that's not in English, in the English language. And so it's like my last name, Corvino, and CorConsult, man, real fancy. And RX. So if you put in that, you can type in like pharmacy into iTunes and it'll come up that way. So it's anywhere you get your podcasts from should be on there. If I'm not, please let me know, because then I got to check my hosting.
Just like if you're in pharmacy, like in any capacity, you need to be listening to this guy because the content is freaking incredible. The guests he bring on are just invaluable. And it's like going to pharmacy school in a fun way all over again without having to sit through class. So yeah. It's an awesome asset and just incredible what you're doing, man. Just like, holy crap.
Thank
you for sharing. That. It's just absolutely incredible. And I think another point that I really want to drive people home with that you just embody is, if you have these passions that are genuine and you have these ideas, don't be scared to go after them. Don't be scared to declare them if they're really what you want, because things will manifest when you put the work and stay focused on that vision. And again, there's a little difference. So you just kind of open all the doors and see what happens. I'm a little bit different and I have that goal. And you just, before we started the podcast, you just brought up an example that I totally forgot about, because I mean, Mike was kind enough. He invited me to fly down to his house a few years back down in Charleston. And then, as I said on the interview with Rich of RX Radio, he lives down in Miami. All 3 of us went down and we just, talked pharmacy stuff that you guys are probably like, why are you working on vacation? Because that was vacation.
Yeah. We podcasted until 4 a.m.
Yeah, well, I'm not gonna lie. I dipped out. I had to have my sleep, so I think I dipped out at 2. But I thought I might have been dreaming with you. I don't know. But anyway, you mentioned about we were having a conversation in the kitchen. This was what, like 3 years ago.
Yeah, I think it was early 2018, and I found that I kind of had forgotten about these clips, but then something reminded me of it, so I went back and was like looking through some of the material because I had filmed a couple video blogs or vlogs, if you want to be cool. And when I was first doing it, I think it was kind of like, what are you doing, dude? Why are you filming this stuff? This is kind of stupid. I'm like, I don't know. I'm just trying something. Let's just see what it is. And I put them on YouTube and, kind of forgot about it. I think there's like 7 or 8 of them on there. But the episode that has all of us on there, we're sitting in Rich's kitchen and you're telling us about this idea that you were super excited about. So much, I don't even know if you remember this, but so much so that you had a wireless mic on because like I'm sitting there trying to be fancy and you were like so excited and you like ripped the mic out and it smashed on the floor and you were like, whatever. And then you just like went off to go get the thing you were trying to show us. And Rich goes, he's not even mic'd anymore. And he said, and you were just out of frame in the video. But you were telling us about the Gen Z Pharmacist book, the idea that you had, and you hadn't started on it. You just like it was just completely an idea at that point, and you were like, "I'm telling you, this is going to be cool. I'm going to do this, that, and the other." Which I wasn't like I doubted you. I'm like, "Yeah, of course, that would be awesome." But over time, we get going with things, you kind of forget that. Well, fast forward to almost 2021, Gen Z Pharmacist is alive and well and published, and I'm like, we have video footage of the moment you like released it to like the idea to us all the way to like, here it is, in actual real life as a hard copy. It's sitting on my shelf right now. And I'm like that. I just thought that was awesome. Cause I'm like, that was kind of my idea originally for why I was filming some of the stuff, because I do talk a little bit of trash and I don't do it to be arrogant, but I mostly just, whatever, I'm competitive. That's the MMA side of me coming out. But I like seeing like, I'm going to do this. Watch me. Yep. But it's sometimes you got to watch me for like 3 years before it happens. Same with all of us. So you were saying like, I'm going to do this, here we go. And then like, we get to see it manifest like a couple of years, 3 years later. I thought that was awesome. Cause like we got, video footage of it.
Yeah. And right now we're going to actually cut to that. So if you're on the YouTube version, we're going to insert that clip right now. Credit to Mike Corvino, CorConsultRx. Here's the clip of me hyping up in the kitchen down in Miami with Rich Waith and Mike Corvino.
Thought process going off of what you said, if you were to go that route, the way I would market it is if that kills, right, and the fit healthcare professional does super well, I would then consider possibly looking at, as a healthcare professional, then branching into, hey, as a healthcare professional, let me introduce to you the fit businessman, the fit stay-at-home mom, the fit whatever, and like start really branching into like random.
I like that.
Because then you would start.
Wait, tell me this again. So
said another way. Let me try to restate it because it might.
You do it. You're better with words than I am.
All right,
that's what I'm looking at your words.
So
Probably
basically, like your first book would be like the fit healthcare professional. Right?
Yeah.
And it could have so much success around healthcare professionals because it has all these different types of things in there. Your next one could be like how to become the fit mom. So there's all different types of moms out there. There's the working mom. There's the there's a stay-at-home mom.
Yeah.
There's the mom that's kind of in between or whatever. Then there's a mom that's also a healthcare professional. So that book would be like a next. So you would still be what I think he was getting to is you'd still actually be able to have this series, but it could start branching out to real crazy niches that wasn't just healthcare.
I see.
So
still doing a series, but just different focuses. So it's not like you said, just stamped out with a little tweak.
But what I think is that instead of it being like the series of the books being 90% the same, 10% different.
Right.
The other for the fit mom would be completely different. And
that makes sense.
And you could still do what you love, and you have more credibility because you're a healthcare professional versus just some dude who works at GNC.
Yeah, I actually like that better. See, that's what I told you guys.
Did I say that right though?
No, yeah, that was way better than what I was saying. That's good. That's why we work well together, because like I can't get it out of here because my brain doesn't work all the time. Young dumb, bro.
So how to go, like why you should go to conferences, how to maximize networking. Where's my phone?
That's fine. I'll buy new ones.
I have a listing because
he's not even mic'd anymore. It's all going off the rails.
Sorry guys. Okay, we're here. I'm here.
I was at work last week and I literally was in the bathroom like I got some freaking good ideas, so I just wrote them down.
Great, man.
Yay. So guys, that was it. I mean, what can I say? I'm a super hype guy. But no, the point of that book, Gen Z Pharmacist, was to really be a resource for pharmacy students who are looking to create that competitive advantage, and pharmacists that have that burning passion and they want to really do something with it that's of value to their niche. So I started to realize, in speaking all over the world to pharmacy schools and associations as a professional speaker, that there's so many people, students and pharmacists, that are so much like more intelligent than me, and they've got all this knowledge, but they have these limiting beliefs because most people in pharmacy are introverted. So Mike, you and I, it's easy for us to go and, or at least through time, going up to people and, you know, getting a mentor, shadowing, you saying like, hey, I'm going to take a paid time off from Walgreens and go shadow you for 14 hours for fun. Is that cool? And they look at you weird. But yeah, that's just how we're wired. Like, we're naturally reach out. But I started to realize that people didn't do that. They were very intimidated. So I thought, what if I could take all these lessons I've learned as a pharmacy student, as a pharmacist, and make a book for what they don't teach you in pharmacy school, but what you need to have a competitive edge in the profession. That's the first part of the book, the skills that you need. And then the end of each chapter is literally workbook style of taking those concepts and putting them into practice. Again, we talked earlier, meeting people where they are. We're all in different places and we grow at different paces. So taking those and implementing them to create an action plan specific for you. Then the second half of the book is I started to see all these amazing people actually through this podcast who are just crushing their career. They've been like the go-to person for 10, 20 years, just dominating, you know, best oncology pharmacist, best diabetes educator, where to the point where the one guy in my book, he's out on the package insert for metformin. Like, he's that freaking influential. One of my dear mentors, and he actually passed away recently, as you guys know. So rest his soul, but his legacy lives on. But guys, these are the kind of people, and I thought, you know, one thing I realized is almost every single one of these people who are dominating their niche did not know they were going to end there. It was a process. They went through trial and error. But right now, they are the best at what they want to do. If I asked them, if you knew you were going to end here on your first day of pharmacy school, what would you have done differently to get to where you are now faster? What organizations would you have joined? What sort of clubs would you have been involved with? What mentorship opportunities, career paths, residencies, fellowships, all that kind of stuff. What would you have done as a student, as a new pharmacist, to expedite your career progress? And I did 22 interviews, and that's the second half of the book. And one of those people is this bro right here, because as you've heard, he's freaking crushing what he's doing. So he gives insight into that process. Like, if I was me 10 years ago, here's what I would have done. So I thought it was a really cool idea, some real invaluable experience. And it's really helped a lot of students all across the world. Like, I have people in Ireland, England. It's freaking crazy. Like, it's awesome, man, just to see that the stupid stuff that I did and the gambles, I guess you could call it, of shadowing, of working for free, all that stuff that have made an impact and paid off, just packaging that and giving it back to share it. And I know that that's something that you're all about too. So that's why it was an honor to, I guess, have that brainstorm in the kitchen and have you hear that, but then literally hold that in your hand. So you hear me talking about it, and then years later it's in your hand. Like, I think it's on your shelf right now, you said. So
you can't see it's behind this, but yeah, it sits in the background of when my podcast is being filmed. It sits in the background so you can see it. Some product placement, no big deal.
He gets his monthly check.
Yeah, there you go. The bro check. And one thing too, just because it's popped into my head, I think this kind of goes with it, because you mentioned people being introverted and things like that. I think one thing that's important, because I don't think that being, someone who's very comfortable just, going up to random people and talking to them and shadowing and blah, blah, blah is the only way of doing it.
Correct.
But like, find what, if you feel like you're introverted to the point where, the idea of just volunteering somewhere is extremely intimidating, then find the way that you look back. If you're still in school, how is it that you learn currently? So for instance, I had a student who made the most insane diagram. She's an artist by hobby, and was making these crazy elaborate diagrams of how these drugs were working, because she was very visual, so she would write it all out and draw it all out, because that would help her kind of figure out mechanisms of action and things like that. And I'm looking at this stuff, and I can't even draw a stick figure. So I'm sitting there like, what do you do with this when it's done? And she's, oh, I mean, I don't know, throw it away. I was like, throw it away. I was like, throw it away. I'm like, oh my God. So I'm like, this needs to be digitalized and put out in the world. You don't have to be somebody that's on video or audio or whatever. If you're a good writer, write. Like, if you are good at drawing, draw. Like, find what you are good at, and again, what you like, and then use that to kind of get your name out there. Because you don't have to have a podcast to be out there. If you're very introverted, your podcast is probably not gonna be that good. It is what it is. I just, like, my drawing would not be very good. No one's gonna download that off LinkedIn. If I put up a drawing, they're gonna be like, this guy is an idiot. But so find out what your talents are, and then what you do feel comfortable with, and use that to kind of jumpstart because there's so many different ways of like presenting your quote unquote brand that represents you. And I think that's an easy way of getting past the intimidation of starting. I mean, use your Mark Twain pseudonym. I don't care. Like, whatever you want to do, like however, if you feel comfortable getting, but get started somehow. And especially if you're still in school, do it now, because it is not going to get easier when you graduate, contrary to every student's popular belief.
Yeah.
I cannot tell you how many students have told me, I'm going to start doing the whole learn every day thing, but I'm going to wait till after I graduate because I got so much on my plate right now.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I am exponentially more busy now than I am when I was in pharmacy school. It's not even in the same galaxy.
Yes.
I played Call of Duty way more when I was in pharmacy school than I could even imagine playing now. So it's like, you think it's going to get easier. It's not. Especially if you have big, dreams of doing big things in your career. So get in the habit now. And then that way, when you do transition over, you're good to go and it's easy. And then however that looks, whether it's, like I said, drawing pictures, writing blogs, study guides, whatever, put that out there for everybody. It's 2020. It's time to get, meet the people where they're all at, which is on the internet.
Exactly. And that's, guys, when people ask me, like, how do I start my brand? Well, first thing, you got to understand why. Like, what's this for? Is this, you got to be real about it. Like, you got to be real about it. Is this for a career? Is this for ego? Are you trying to explore, like, what's it about? Then when you figure out, like, what do I do with this? You've got to look at what you genuinely like doing, because you're going to have days that suck. And if you don't like it, it's not going to work long term. You need to look at what you're good at, okay? What you like. So I like talking, of course. Some people don't like that. They like behind the scenes infographics, stuff like that. Then you have to look at who cares about your content. Who is your audience? Who would find value in that? And then in that audience, where do they spend time? So, for example, if you're trying to help out pharmacists or pharmacy students looking at social media platforms, most of the time that's Instagram, LinkedIn. There's other things, but those are the two main ones. So the content you make, does it fit any of those realms? And it's kind of like a Venn diagram type deal. When you find that intersection, that's where you go to maximize your time. And then from there, it's a trial error of evolutionary process. But spot on, Mike. You gotta find what you enjoy. Not everything for all people. What you're good at, what you like, and what will be of service to others, and where they're spending time to ingest that content.
Yep.
So, guys, as you probably can tell, this guy puts out some good freaking content himself. So, highly endorse his podcast. It's absolutely incredible. I think it's the highest rated pharmacy podcast on iTunes, I believe, as far as ratings go. Like, it's freaking good, dude. Like, that you can't fake that.
I think Helix and a couple others probably have more ratings than I do. I think we're all listed as 5.0, but
independent. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. There you go.
Independent podcaster in pharmacy. Yeah. It's freaking incredible. Like,
yeah. I get, the internet will call me on a Reddit post like, this guy thinks he's awesome. So you gotta be real cautious about how you,
I'm hyping him up. Yeah. But it's real talk. Yeah. You have your humble pie.
Adam's sometimes a little too nice about how things are. So I appreciate the compliment, man. That means a lot.
No, real talk though. I just say what I see. It's the facts. Numbers don't lie, man. But seriously, it's been an honor to see your evolution and journey. And I'm just freaking so inspired and can't wait to see what else comes from this. But I want to make sure that people can see the amazing content you're creating. So CorConsultRx podcast, you guys need to get that on all platforms, subscribe. Where else are you most active, dude, so that people can follow you and engage with what you're doing?
So besides the podcast, any social media platform, even TikTok, which I need to spend a lot more time on there, but I'm just still trying to figure out how to make that incorporate nerd stuff into a bunch of people dancing, because that's not going to be me, unfortunately. But any of the social media platforms, Instagram is probably my biggest that I use. Twitter, Facebook, Medium for I've written a few articles on there. If you can email me at mcorvino@CorConsultRx.com. You could even, if you want to text me directly, I have a texting app or a texting platform. So the number, just send a text to 415-943-6116. I'll reach out, there. But yeah, so regardless of where you want to meet me at, I'm do my best to be there as well, so that you don't have to come on my terms. So I try to be as accessible as possible.
Yeah, and he really does pour into just seeing the students that he's worked with. Whenever I was down visiting you down in Charleston, you the students you had, they're just I think they were getting off of they went to pharmacy school, and then they worked their shift as an intern, and then they came to your house. And I was like, okay, this guy is qualified to live on Mike's terms of work. So but guys, just all those links and the numbers and the email will be in the show notes so you can connect with him. But just such an honor, dude. Thank you so much for sharing your journey, for your story, because it inspired me, and without a doubt it'll inspire others who are on the path but feeling like they're stumbling, or people that thought about starting but haven't done it yet. The time is now. So guys, this has been an absolute pleasure. Mike, thank you for all that you do for the profession and beyond. It's just absolutely incredible, dude. So yeah, I'm just so freaking proud of you, man.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. No, I really appreciate the opportunity to come back on and chat some. And I'm right back at you, man. You've been doing some awesome stuff, and I'm proud to have gotten to see some of the journey along the way.
Awesome, bro. Well, hey guys, this is Dr. Adam Martin of the Fit Pharmacist Healthcare Podcast, signing off with the Mike Corvino of CorConsultRx. Go forth, be great, dispense your full potential, and script your brand.
I see my victory so clear.